everyone, what's up? This is Simon from Didactic, back with a new tutorial on how to create a data table inside your Ionic app. So this is not the most common pattern inside mobile applications because the screen is quite small most of the time and you don't really have the space to display a big data table. But as we know, we could also build a website or PWA with Ionic, and from time to time you might really just need a data table. And there's a great package called ngx-datatable that we're going to use inside our Ionic application. So let's see how this looks. I've created a blank new Ionic app, and the first thing we're going to need is to install the package from Swimlane ngx-datatable. And to use this table, we will also generate a new page called table, just because the regular homepage does not have a module file, and I just want to incorporate this with the real lazy loading stuff. So go ahead and remove also the homepage from here and instead use our table page. And of course as well, go to your app module, remove the homepage reference as well, and again, and there we go. So to use our ngx-datatable package, we need like 2 or 3 more small things. So the first one is adding a custom copy configuration for your app to the package.json. And we're gonna need 2 separate files. So create a new folder, config at the top level, and in here we create the sass config.js and also the copy config.js, because when we use this node package, we need to copy over some styling material and some fonts so that the data table looks good, and also they use little icons and we need them as well. So we override those Ionic tasks, and then you can go to your copy config and insert this. So this part is the regular copy config from Ionic, and this is just the special part for the fonts. You see the 2 fonts are copied over to our fonts folder. And then you can go to the node modules, Ionic native, nope, Ionic, app scripts, config, sass config, and basically copy all the sass config. And this is also where you're gonna take the copy config if you like to. So add the sass config, and at some point you will see the include path. And in here we need another entry which points to our data table release folder, and this will basically copy over the styling as well. So make sure you got those 2 files in place for our package and edit the config part, and then you can simply first of all close this again, go to your theme file, or let's do it in the apps. Yes, let's do it here, and import themes bootstrap. So the data table comes with 2 themes. Import themes dark, so there's a dark and a bootstrap theme. And finally also import assets icons. So if you want to order the data table columns, they got their own icon, a little triangle. So if you import the icons correctly, you will also automatically get this little icon at the top. All right, we got the data table page. I think we got everything in place. So let's start the Ionic serve command in the background, and let's head over to presenting a basic table. To use the data table module in your lazy loaded pages, you need first of all to include the ngx-datatable module. And of course, this is not working automatically the first time. So go ahead and import it from @swimlane. There we go, ngx-datatable. Not sure why it's marked red. Okay, now we're good. And let me bring in the app. There we go. Beautiful Ionic app, hopefully still working. Not sure why it's still building. Build is finished. All right, I think we're good here. So to display some data inside our table, we need some data. This could either come from your API, or in our case, we will just use an array of some rows to display some data. This is also copied to some degree, not this part, from the official repository. And I'll also immediately add a little switch regarding the styling, because it's super easy and I just want to show you the both options you have to present the table. So therefore we're gonna add a little style switch, which will check if this table style is equal to Bootstrap. In that case, we set our table style to, well, let's do it like this. Then we go back to Bootstrap, and else we set our table style to dark. So a really simple switch in here. Now, to display the table, we need, of course, to change our HTML a bit. I don't know how to call this, ngx-table perhaps. And let's make the color already dark, so we're prepared for the dark mode. And in here we add a button, so we can switch our style then. Using ion button, icon only, and on click, we call our own function called switch style. And there we go, ion icon name bulb. So we can basically turn on or off the light within our app. Now the interesting part begins, because we use the ngx-datatable component, and there are a few things you can add. You can look them up in the documentation, which is actually not super great, but they got a lot of examples, and then you can go to the GitHub page of those examples to see what's actually happening in there. So we also need an ng class, which is our table style, because we're loading this variable from our TypeScript file. And then there are a few more settings, but the first and most important is to set the rows, which is basically the data source for the table. And then you can do freaky stuff like setting the column mode. Let's do this force. This should force the column to have a specific size. Oh, this looks awesome. Not. Well, let's do this a bit nicer. And you can also by default add the sort type. You can later on also define your own sorting algorithm. So it's really easy to customize all of the parts. And let's make it reaudible. Not really. So turn this to false. This is the basic setup for the table. And now you need to define the different columns within your table. So let's do this inside ngx-datatable column. And first one, let's call this name. And there we go. And this is now already enough for our table to look up the fields in our JSON. So if our fields are name, gender, age, we can simply use name, gender, in age in here as well. And the result can bind to rows, since it's not ngx data table. Oh, it's a hard word for me. So make sure to spell it correctly. Unexpected closing tag, of course, because I changed this one. And hopefully now, oh, come on, reaudible, isn't it called like this? Reorderable, whatever, English is a hard language. All right, finally we got our little app here. and sometimes it breaks because you haven't specified the according functions for whatever is needed in here. Perhaps you might need a newer version of ngx.js with the latest release. Anyway, we see that we got a great data table, which especially looks good on a bigger device, and on a smaller device it is okay with the 3 columns, I think. We also added the switch, so currently we are on the Bootstraps theme, which means we get this alternating style. But if we go to dark mode, it still looks very good, I think. And also we're able to reorder the rows. As you can see, now we're starting with this letter. Now it's the other way around, and we could also order by age, ascending or descending, whatever you like to. But if you want to combine those orderings, it doesn't work that good all the time, so be aware of that. Normally it works for one, so up, down, and then back to normal, and then you can pick another row. Alright, so that's the basic setup, yes, including the package, loading the styles, the fonts, setting a data source, defining some stuff for the table, and then simply creating the columns. But of course, we want to take this a bit further. So we want to add some customized styling for, let's say, a female and male row. We want to add a little click event or button to a row. And also, we might want to have something like a summary row, which sums up the column at the top. And we can do all of this, no problem. So let's go to our table TS back again and implement a few functions. First of all, let's call this getRow class for a row. And this will return a specific class for a row. Perhaps we can add the classes up front. So go to the styling. And just for a male row, we will set a green background. For a female row, we will set a red background. And to do so, we check or we return the row.gender. If this is male, we want to return the CSS class male row, and otherwise female row. Of course, this is just a real basic check that we can do. And to apply it to our table, we can simply specify what's it called again? I think it was Jesus, what's it called again? Let me look it up. Column mode, yes, it is of course called row class, and then get row class. So this will be called for each and every row. And let's see what happens. It's loading, and then we see that we have now applied a custom styling to the female and the male row using our getRow class. And this can be really handy if you want to point out different elements of your table. Let's say we now want to open a row. So perhaps we're gonna add a little private alert controller, and then we create the alert using our alert controller, create title, whatever, row, message. And in here, we can now use our row, of course, and the values of the row. So what we could do is we know our data structure. So row.name is row.age years old. Okay, super expert example, but anyway, just showing you what's possible with this package. And then go ahead and call alert present. So how can we now actually use this? Well, we can add our own column, ngx-datatable column, and then just say name ID, a field that's not yet taken, resizable false. We're gonna add this in other places as well. And now we use a slightly different syntax because we're gonna add our own template for those columns and rows. So ng template ngx-datatable header template. So this is for the header row. We're gonna name this one action. And then the template for the actual row, which is ngx-datatable cell template. And because we want to have access to the value of the row, because we need to pass it to the function to open the row, we can also say let row equals row, and then the row will be available in this template. And then we just make a little ion button. Let's make this one small. And for the color, let's use light styling. And then with a click event, we call our previously created function open and just call this details. So now we have defined another column for the table, which should be at the end of our rows. And those buttons have access to the value of the row, and they call the function we've defined. Resizable, of course, I did something wrong. Resizable like this. So let's see. Button, ion button. Where's my button? Button, ion button. Hello, hello button. Where are you? You're supposed to be there. Button, hello. ng template, ngx datatable cell template, button, ion button, small. Normally it should be there. Perhaps we need to define the rest of our app, but normally it should be there. Or did I make some issue, some problem? I'm not that good at looking at what I've written previously and then doing this if the words are so long. So data table header, we actually see the header, so we got the action, but we don't see the row, and that's a problem. Data table, come on, I am so bad with this word, data table. I don't know why. So now we see the button row height is not yet good, so this is really not completely optimized for mobile, but of course if we use something that's made for the web like this data table in combination with buttons from Ionic that are more or less made for mobile, you always run into some troubles. Anyway, we now got the button and we see we get the alert. Simon is 28 years, sounds good. So now we've attached the button and we can see this. We got the row styling, and we also wanted to show a summary row. So let's finish this up with the summary. And to get the summary row, you can either use the pre-made summary function, which will basically sum up the values, but perhaps you want a different value to be displayed as the summary for your row. And in that case, let me bring in the calculation. I don't want any more typos today. Let's say for the summary, for the gender row, we want to display how many male and female persons are inside that list. So we just filter our values, check for male, take the length, check for female, take the length, and then return this string. And for the age summary, we also got all the values, and then we return values, reduce A and B, A plus B, and we start at 0, and we want to divide all of this to the length, so we get the average age for the persons. Now let's go back to our table and let's see how we can incorporate those summary rows, and how also we could change a few other things. So we've seen the row height was not really good. Let's change this one to be 50. Then we want to enable the summary row, so make this one true. And perhaps also the summary position should be, in our case, at the top of the table. So there are quite a lot of things you could define in here. And I think that's all I wanted to add at this point. And as you can see with those, you can also define them are a bit more complex. So let's remove the name how it was, and let's add, or let's keep them like this and just show the difference. So in this case, we just use the name. It will be shown as name at the top of the row, at the column, and it will also use this field. But perhaps you want to display a different name and use the values. So you can also use property, which will look up for name in your values, and then use more or less the same syntax we used for our special button to display a specific name. And if you also want the sorting, so some stuff breaks if you use different things. In this case, you can use the standard sorting and apply it using this. This is not a function in our code, but from the data table. And in here we use not the row, but just the value. So print out the value. It's a different way of doing things in here. For our two other tables or columns, let's bring them in again. We wanted to show the summary row, and we can do this by applying a summary function in here and saying gender summary. And now there's a slight problem if you connect this to a summary function and then in here use like this something this dot values or so, because this will work in its own context and you would have to bind your scope to this. So to fix this, which is not really needed in this example, but I had problems, so I wanted to show this. It works like this. Now you could also use the this command or the this word in your gender summary like you always do within TypeScript classes. And of course we want to apply this to the age as well. Again, it is optional, we don't really need it, but in case you run into troubles, this might fix the problem. So let's compile this again, and hopefully we have now enough space for our rows. All right, the height is good. We get a little summary for both the gender and age row. 1 male, 3 female, perfect. And this should be the average age. Yeah, I think it will be right. Also, we see we got the special username up here, and we still got the values. And right now the reordering is not working anymore because I don't know, something with the summary function breaks this. Also with the details, I'm not exactly sure why, but I'm pretty sure there's a way to fix this. So if you want to combine everything, perhaps just ask below or look into the options on the official package. All right, so that concludes today's tutorial. We've seen how to add the ngx-datatable package to our Ionic app. Of course, be aware that this might not look super good on your mobile device, especially if you're using like 4, 5, 6 columns. Perhaps in horizontal mode this might work, or landscape mode, but in portrait this would look really bad. So be aware of that. But if you're building for the web, it's a great package to easily display your data. There are a lot of options for using async data, showing loading, searching, whatever. Great package, just check it out on GitHub. Also, make sure to subscribe to this channel below for more Ionic videos, and also check out the ionicacademy.com, which is my own place to show you how you can easily get started with Ionic, learn Ionic, learn the basics, but also the advanced stuff like connecting to servers, building your own little Node.js APIs, and an awesome community that will support you on your journey to become an Ionic developer. So stay tuned, have a great day, and see you inside the next video.